Welcome back to another episode of the Open Mic Podcast. I'm Noah Jones, the host of the show, and on this episode I have bandmates from Tcrxp out of Loudonville. It's a great show, and we'll be right back after this message from Mechanics Bank.
Hello, people who clearly love the local music scene. It's us, Mechanics Bank. And as the only local, independent bank in Richland County, we're kind of the indie band of the banking scene. Which means helping our hometown friends and neighbors achieve their dreams and goals is music to our ears. So stop by sometime to talk about smart ways to save, or how to budget, or how to get a home loan, or we can just play it by ear. A banking jam session, if you will. Mechanics Bank. That's better. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
Welcome to the Open Mic Podcast. My name is Noah Jones. I'm the music writer at Richland Source, and today I'm being joined by Tcrxp band members Zach and Tim. How are you today, guys?
Pretty good.
Yep, good. How about yourself?
Oh, I'm so great. Thank you so much for asking, although one of you just told me that I looked tired.
And sounded like it.
Wow, boy, I better start emulating, or whatever the word is, a better positive attitude here.
At this point, you sound like me.
Excellent. What are we talking about today, boys?
Let's talk about what we're working on. We've been doing a lot of studio work over we've been together for 2 years now.
Right. Well, let's start with you all. I saw a Facebook post that you guys have at least 4 to 5 songs that are coming out in 2020. So let's talk about your recording sessions in 2019. I understand that you have one single out currently called Less Than that came out last year. Was that part of the whole batch of
that was recording? So last summer we spent most of the time in the studio versus doing anything externally in the public eye. I live in Loudonville, Zach lives in Worcester. We rehearse and do everything over at my place in Loudonville. And my studio space essentially doubles as we use it for studio recording. And then when we're done with setting up his drums and everything, we break down all the mics, we break down a lot of the soundproofing and stuff, and then convert it back into a rehearsal area where we use an electronic kit for him. And we use a lot of stuff with headphones, in-ear monitors and everything. So we can basically, I'll just mic the cabs, run the bass amp DI in, with everything. And everything's super quiet, so that really all you hear upstairs is just him slapping on pads and me singing, and occasionally, probably, if you can hear it at all, just strings being strummed on an electric. So it's very quiet during our actual rehearsals. But in our earphones, there's a lot of noise going on. But
truly a symphony of destruction.
Nice. So just the two of you guys then, right?
Yeah.
It's very Black Keys.
Yeah. A little bit. I would take some inspiration from them a little bit.
Well, I just really meant there are two of you in the
Yeah.
band. But yeah,
right.
I mean, your music's not too different considering the instruments being used. Yeah.
What's the
White Stripes?
Is that what you're thinking of? The other heavier one there? That's a 2-piece. Blood.
Oh, I'm not sure with the word blood on it. It makes me nauseous. No, I'm kidding.
I cannot remember their name, but yeah, they're a lot of the. So with a 2-piece, the one thing I wanted to get away from was using a bass as the main stringed instrument. I wanted to keep it with the guitar, although I play baritones. I don't really play my regular standard scale stuff hardly at all anymore. I will on occasion, but for most of the stuff I do, everything's baritone related anymore, which for any listener out here who is kind of well, what's a baritone? It sits between a bass and a standard electric. It's I think a fifth down or something, so you can successfully scale length them out to 30 inches or more pretty easily without kind of getting into the bass territory and be pretty cool with it. So that's basically what I do, and I tune down a lot of what we do. Again, I don't really play anything in the standard E key that a standard electric guitar's in. Although this is what's interesting to me at least, that I will leave. So as of right now, I have 2 baritones. I will leave on one of it. I will leave 5 out of the 6 strings, typically in E standard tuning, but I'll just mess around with the bottom string tuning. So I'll take it down to D, C, B, occasionally to A for that instrument. Then my other one, it's a little bit longer. I'll actually it's B standard. I'll drop it down to A, occasionally take it down to G or whatever. But I typically love the open string bottom stuff, which, looking at forums and stuff, there's a lot of people who make fun of Slayer for doing like the open chug type stuff.
I mean,
but
it makes it easy.
Yeah, it makes it a lot easier. But at the same time, when you're doing the kind of stuff that we're doing, it does help some. So the fact that there's two of us, I'm playing a baritone, my signal gets routed out and dropped down into bass territory. So that's how we get an actual bass sound in our music. And then I'll also use a like an on-off switch basically for that foot pedal. So while trying to come up with this style, let's call it that, if you got to call a label on it, style of the type of music that I'm working on now, I wanted to be able to pump the bass in and out at will, like a regular bass player if we had one, but sort of not just use it as the noise being there, but I wanted it to be a part of the actual songwriting process too. So it would be like, you've got a verse that doesn't have anything except the guitar. You get to the chorus, you punch it in, it makes it sound that much bigger. While, if you've got a standard 3 or 4 piece band, if you've got a regular bass player, they're going to want to play the whole song. Usually, in my experience, being in bands, watching bands, they all want to play all the time at the same time. So so there is that, and so I like that idea of just being able to pump it in and out at will. And then with our inner ear monitors, we're using a backing track, layer track. So like Less Than, that's a 9 Inch Nails cover, and it's got a lot of synthesizer parts going on it. Not only the arpeggiation
Gotcha. I didn't
stuff.
realize it was a cover.
Yeah.
That's cool. And so go ahead and tell me a little bit about it.
So we had been recording a bunch of drum stuff last year. We had just put out at the beginning of the year Robin Hood's Reverse, 3 songs.
Mm-hmm.
And after we got done with that, we got into early summer, maybe late spring. It's like, well, let's just set up for the drums and just start knocking out songs one weekend after another, So I think collectively we're sitting on maybe somewhere between 5 and 7 like tracks of drum stuff.
Pure gold.
Oh yeah. And so those are ready to go. We have one that we're hoping to have ready to go to release in April, and it's a fun one. And I've got some stuff that Zach hasn't even heard about yet, like adding into it, just because I, as a listener, growing up in the 90s as a teenager and a younger teenager, like you bought albums because you wanted to, but a lot of your favorite bands and
Great observation.
I know, right? Well, half the time it was your parents' money, so you've got that aspect, and then you're listening to the album, and you might like 4 songs on it.
True.
And the rest of it is just fluff material, right? So that was kind of like the idea of what I kind of wanted to do was stop trying to release fluff with like do an album. Like you look online and the conversations all over the place. Release an EP this year. Release an album. It's like just focus on whatever the hell you want, Don't like try and build it up as something amazing. Just release it, just get out there and do what you want. But for us, it was kind of like, well, let's do it a song at a time, maybe make sure it's a really good song that we really like. And I don't mean necessarily like it's got to be a top 10 single or some crap like that. That's not what we mean. Something that's good to us, super catchy. If people can relate to it or like it, that's awesome. If, in one of my favorite Serge Tankian quotes, who's the singer for System of a Down, I was watching this interview with him, he was talking about, I make the music that I want. If people don't like it, I don't care. I like it. So in the end of the day, I hate quoting other people, but that's a great one, So a lot of the stuff that we make, we like it.
Well, yeah, you can't really. I couldn't see myself wanting to play stuff that I wasn't into. I think that also what I've noticed last week, I spoke with Sean Mullins, and it was a really interesting conversation, and he was talking about how he likes to sort of tell people what each song is about, but not too much, because he wants people to sort of experience it as they play it. Mm-hmm. And he is very into his music, not in a bad way. That sort of sounds more egotistical than I mean it. But I can't imagine, as a musician myself, I can't imagine going up on stage and singing something that I'm not, into 100% or not believing in.
Right.
And I think that the audience also would just sort of see right through anyone trying to do that, trying to sort of just BS their way through a gig like that. So I totally understand where it is that you're coming from and trying to say.
Yeah, how do you get kids to really, like, kids, by kids I mean like teenagers and high schoolers, like, how do you get them to really sell show choir music, because they didn't write it. They're just up there singing and dancing, and it's an awesome experience. Do they really feel it? I don't know.
Maybe not. I mean, some of them may learn that they're natural stars, like being in front of the audience.
Yeah.
Lose your stage fright. Ultimately, whatever projects you have on the side, maybe it'll help you reach those goals as you get older.
That's true.
Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about the songs besides the one that you were just telling us about, or even like its name or what?
So the new one that we're working on here, it's called Hard Decisions. It's I would say it's our most ambitious release at this point. It's, as of right now, there are 2 songs on it, and I'm hoping to throw another one on it just to sort of expand it a little bit, possibly a piano version of Apathetic Man and the Wolves at the Door, just something more of a B-side. I don't mean like as in a fluff way, but more of just this is something that exists already. Here's a different idea for it. Here's a different way to think about it. So if I get time to do it, I might try it. If not, Hard Decisions came about. I don't know how that one came out, but it was just one I noodled with and wrote. Like, most of the stuff that I write, if I get into a good groove, I come up with a song fairly fast, and I can piece it together from start to finish, usually in a matter of minutes to a half hour, And then if I like it enough that I'm like, yes, this is good, I'm going to go turn the mics on and go back and like track it. That way I can, like, next weekend when I'm back in the studio, I can be like, oh yeah, hey, that was that one. How was that? Oh yeah, this is it right here. So Hard Decisions. I would almost label it as fairly progressive rock, like proggy, like it's less than, being, it's got a lot of electronical arpeggiations running on it. So what's kind of funny, in my opinion at least, and this is my opinion, you guys can think it's absolute crack if you want, like, but
that's pretty addicting.
Yeah, but so it's, again, another arpeggiation thing. A lot of my influences are from arpeggiated music, and I really like arpeggiation. So it's an 8-count arpeggiation, which is kind of fun. I don't personally write a lot of guitar-driven 8-count arpeggiation stuff. I do like doing the 3/4 time. Dystopia does a really fantastic one. That's like a great 3/4 swing to it. But when I started piecing together Hard Decisions, I tracked that probably, I want to say, last September. And then on the side, I'm a yoga instructor. So when I'm sitting around doing like my own practices at home, I'll listen to my music. And so I have this aerial
Kanye West.
I have this aerial yoga thing in my basement in a different room, and as I'm sitting there hanging and just sort of laying in it, like total heart opener, like chest opener, you're just like laying a few feet off the floor with headphones on, and I'm listening to it, and I'm getting to the end of the song, and I just start singing this melody, and I'm like, you know what? We need to put this in, but I don't know how I want to do it. And then one day I kept just going over and over, and I'm like, I want to do this with brass. Let's get some horns in here. Let's something really kind of interesting on here, almost like Radiohead Kid A, like something where they're bringing in like flugelhorns and stuff, like maybe in Rainbows, I think they did some weird stuff like that. Just something outside the box from the traditional, here's a prog rock song, So I brought in a couple guys for a paid gig and recorded them, a couple local kids out of Loudonville. One of them's a high schooler and the other one is his older brother in college. One of them is a trumpet player and the other one's a trombone player. So we tracked that one afternoon. I threw some saxophone parts on it with it just to kind of fill it out a little bit. And then basically we just started mixing it. Like right now, my process for it is to try and finish. I got to get the vocals tagged in beginning of March. And then after that, it'll just be hopefully sitting down and mixing it all together in like a weekend or something like that. But
I think the horns give it a really nice epic feel to it. So I'm a big fan of that kind of style, like Demigod from Behemoth. I love that feeling of just being bigger than everything else.
Yeah, that sounds cool. And so are you thinking like each each month for at least a little bit, or
it'll really depend on how much time I have available,
Sure,
right?
sure.
Because my main job is very time consuming, and so on the weekends when we can get together, we try to. We're like this year we wanted to try and get more gigs on the schedule because last year we spent more time in the studio. So like when you look at the amount of stuff we have released now, there's like 4 releases floating around and not a whole lot of activity as far as getting out to promote it.
Right. We've done a lot with people's ears, not enough with their eyes. They got to see these faces.
Yeah.
for sure.
So we do.
I mean, look at these beautiful beards. This room full of them.
Right.
Yeah.
That was exactly what I was thinking.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like sort of a William Riker power of the beard.
Yes, exactly. It's a special club that nobody's really a part of unless you have a beard.
Not until you
Except
get to
like 75% of men right now in
Oh,
the dead of winter.
I know. Man. I saw a guy walking around Walmart the other day. Super, super perfect beard, like clearly combed, well kept, oiled up. I'm like, man, you should be a professor of something.
Well, that's cool. So, you sent a couple of things you wanted to talk a little bit about, and you were talking about the political state of the world. Have you written any songs about that?
So Dystopia is that's kind of like a lot of our stuff is very caked in sarcasm, right? Like I it's hard to do a lot of the stuff that we're writing and stuff with a straight face. I mean, you have to laugh at everything that is going on out there because you look at DC and what's going on politically, and if you can't laugh at it, man, we are so screwed right now, like with everything that's going on. So the only thing I can do is laugh at it because I feel hopeless to do anything about it because...
I mean, it's essentially the comedian's take from The Watchmen.
Yeah, in a way.
Did you guys watch that?
Oh
yeah.
Love
Like
it.
So good.
And read it too. Best graphic novel.
Yeah, I'm sort of new to the nerd world, I think, and I'm not trying to be mean at all.
No, of course not. It's a new culture.
My really good friend and I, well, I'm poor as shit,
No,
so I use his HBO to watch Watchmen.
Yeah.
I haven't watched the series. I
No, I
have
haven't
yet
either yet.
Oh, you
no,
have to.
I'm just talking about the movie and the original
I
novel.
think it's fantastic.
Okay. Yeah, I
And
gotta check it
the
out.
movie is also really good, but the latest TV show is what's in my head, and I guess I can't talk about it, unfortunately.
No, I appreciate
but
that.
It's
very,
an alternative
very, very
take.
well
I mean,
done.
have you read the graphic novel?
No.
You got to read
That's
that.
okay. Yeah,
like
yeah.
that is hands down like better than the show is going to be.
Alan Moore is
Like,
an incredible writer.
Yeah, the stuff is phenomenal. And like Dystopia, there's a great line in there that's right out of Watchmen is who will watch the Watchmen, and then I threw on the other line, who will guard the guards, just because it was, it did kind of work with that a lot.
I mean,
but,
especially relating to the police incidents that happen now. It's a perfect analogy.
Yeah. So, do you, in that song, is it mostly about, police brutality or
so with
what's happening in DC?
Well, that one. So that
which
one I wrote.
Scandal do we choose from?
Yeah. So really, you could just take the song, put it on a dartboard, and like throw a topic dart at it and make it
Trump's
stick.
face.
Probably. Yeah. I mean, really, you probably could. Dystopia. I think I wrote that one 2017, maybe. I'm not entirely sure. Like before Zach and I got together, I was playing down in Columbus with a group from like 2011 until about 2014-ish maybe, and it went through several iterations until at the end it was me and the bass player left, and we made it into a rock rap project where he was still down in Columbus and we were doing everything via Dropbox. Like we were writing together in Fruity Loops, and then or FL Studio, I guess, as most producers would call it now. So FL Studio, and just going back and forth with Dropbox, and then taking it out live and like putting it together with a live drummer. As far as like similarities, I would say we were trying to go for like this 311 Rage Against the Machine kind of thing. But when it ended, I went into like writing mode because where I live, there's just not a lot of musicians that think like me. I don't know if you've spent any time in Loudonville. I enjoy living there now. It's taken me a long time after living in Columbus and moving to Loudonville and not being able to go to the grocery store past 7 o'clock at night.
Yeah, I can imagine two totally different worlds.
Oh, yeah.
I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri.
Oh, wow.
And
You've come a long
so
way.
even the fact that like Mansfield closes before like 9,
It's
and
wild.
it's closed on Sundays.
Oh yeah.
Took a lot of patience for me to get used to.
That's how Worcester is too, and it's much smaller than Mansfield. And I actually grew up and recently moved up from Columbus, so I'm used to the city.
Yeah, I've been to Worcester a couple of times.
There's nothing exciting.
Hey, I don't know.
I disagree. I
It's
think
got
Broken
some cool
Rocks
stuff.
is really great.
Absolutely, dude.
Broken Rocks
Bosco's,
is fantastic. That's like my favorite restaurant there.
What's the pizza joint we went to? Why can't I remember?
Cochia House.
Cochia is incredible. If you haven't tried their pizza,
I've
do it.
not.
It's totally worth
I will
doing.
put that in my event
It's like an
plan.
old little house, and like they only do cash and checks only. I think
Yeah.
they don't even take cards for it. So good tidbit when you go,
Yeah,
take
thank
cash
you.
or
Also,
checks.
he had a tip, and I didn't know this, but he showed up 15 minutes early. I thought, no, I'm just going to show up when they open. I was wrong.
Oh,
Thankfully,
yeah,
he got
like-
us a table.
It was packed like a half hour to 15 minutes before they even opened. Like there was a line, and this was on like what, a Saturday or Sunday maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was like a normal night, but so being transitioning to Loudonville was very difficult to some degree. But so I went and jammed with a few people in the area, but nothing really ever gelled. Like the thing that kind of got to me after a while was not that I'm not going to say any of my former bandmates were like the most professional in the world, because they weren't, and I wasn't at that time either. But like as I started getting more into what I was wanting to do, I wanted to make it more professional and not just business-like, but more like think about what we're doing here and show up on time. As I'm late tonight getting here, I'm saying this, of course.
As I'm late to most
I
practices.
wasn't going to say anything.
Yeah. So, show up for rehearsal on time and don't like freaking 20 minutes after we're supposed to start, like
Sorry about
be
that.
like, oh yeah, I'm not coming. Like, so like things like that would happen. And I would get so pissed off because I had one practice lined up where I went out and bought like $200 on a new pedal specifically designed for me to drop the bass down. And I was really excited about getting to work with a drummer that day. And it fell through. I was just like, damn it, there are no good musicians in this area that think like me, that want to do the same sort of stuff. But eventually, this guy throws up an ad on Craigslist because, coming from Columbus, that's how I found all my bandmates, was using Craigslist,
Yeah.
And his ad was literally like the most professional one out of anybody. I think, would you use the Mansfield Craigslist? It was probably
I
like
used
the closest.
a bunch. I used that. I used Cleveland.
I think I found
tried.
it. I think I found it on the Mansfield one, but it was based out of Worcester. But like, it was the most professional sounding out of everything I'd come across on the Mansfield musicians Craigslist. I'm like, I want to talk to this guy. This guy sounds interesting, and he is.
Oh,
Zach is a
thanks.
fantastic drummer. He's been absolutely wonderful with like the type of music that we're writing together. We track it, and then I'm just now starting to get to the stage with the actual like mixing process where I come back to him and I'm like, dude, I need to know your thoughts on like the plate sound that you want on your snare. What kind of reverb do you want on your toms here? Because like in the first couple of releases that we were doing, like I would just do it all, but now I'm like, I need this guy's input because he's the actual drummer. What does it sound like? What does he want it to sound like?
So talk to me about that. That sounds sort of unique, at least. Most of the people that I know who write songs are typically just like the lead singer or like the rhythm guitarist. That's what I do in my band. I come up with a noise and say, hey, this is what we're doing. Like,
Yeah.
Right.
If you don't like it, write something better. But until that happens, this is what we're doing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. I mean,
Uh,
it's basically
so
here's the
it's
idea.
Got to be pretty cool. Like, talk to me a little bit about what that means, getting to write the song in your
Oh, for
in your
sure.
experience.
I mean, it's giving birth to something. I mean, that's really what it feels like, is you're really creating something from yourself, and especially being able to help with the mixing, mastering, and recording process. It's something I didn't really get to do in the past. Like, I've been in professional studios, and I mean, don't get me started on the waste of money that can be early on in a musician's career, because
Yeah.
you can spend thousands and get nothing out of it ultimately, but experience. So, I mean, seeing this guy basically start and work his way through learning how to record, mix, and master at home, improve the equipment he had, and get better and better at his home studio. I mean, it's awesome. And now getting more and more input, not just from me, but from outside sources online and in person. He's finding these other groups of people who also record and have ears for actually mixing and mastering great songs. So I've got a pretty good ear being a drummer for, I don't know, 12, 13, 14, however old I am, it's that minus 12. So I think 16 years I've been drumming. So I've got a pretty good ear for it, and I listen to a lot of different genres of music. So I also know the kind of drums I like. So when he asks for my input, I get that time to say, this is what I want to hear. This is what it should sound like. I want this sort of cracking sound. I want this thud, whatever it may be. And he can make it happen. It's amazing.
For the most part, yeah. I try to do the best I can with it, As far as the mixing stuff goes, I remember, I think this is going to date me a lot here. I think Windows 98 maybe.
Oh.
Like one of my best friends in high school, we were using Sound Recorder, which is a really old program in Windows.
Is that an app?
On Windows 10, if it still existed, which I don't even know if it does, it would be an app. But,
a generic Android one.
yeah. So it was literally just a sound recorder, and we would just like do stuff with it. And then eventually we upgraded to this program called Tcrxp that we used through college, and we made a lot of great music with it. We spent years together doing some band stuff. We were in West Virginia, and then we both ended up in Florida together in '04, which was a really fun year to be in Florida during Bush W's re-election year. That was a fantastic year to be in Florida. I used to be in journalism too, by the way, for like about 5 years maybe of my life. I did pagination and a couple music reviews, but that was like a lot of design work.
I loved pagination.
Oh my God, it was so fun.
It was so much fun. It's like making a puzzle every day. Oh yeah.
I got burnt out on it though. Like I went
there's only so many late nights you really want to do it.
Yeah, right?
But it's a really great feeling for those of you listening who don't know what pagination is. On a newspaper, you basically get to choose how many columns you want to fill the paper with that day, typically 4, maybe sometimes 5. And then you also are given these ads, and someone, usually the editor of the newspaper or the pagination person, will put the advertisements on the actual physical newspaper, and then you have to basically figure out how to get all of the different bodies of content onto the page. And if you don't have enough space, you have to figure out the spacing or the
it's a math game and all kinds of stuff.
Wrapping text.
Yeah.
I think when I was doing it, we used Quark a lot. And at the time, I think Adobe stuff was starting to take over. And
I used Adobe InDesign in college.
Okay.
That's what I really, really liked. That's what we had at my first newspaper.
Nice.
So there was I only lasted there 3 days. This is such an embarrassing story. It's so funny though. When I was in Florida, I ended up at the Daytona Beach News Journal there, but I only lasted 3 days because I was dating this girl from college, and she went back home to West Virginia, and I followed her. But the software that they used there at that time in '04 was a local company's software right out of Daytona, and it was basically like a math problem. Like you had to write in an equation for your X coordinate and your Y coordinate and try to create a box to drop your story in. It's like, there's software you can literally just grab it out of a template and drop it on a page, right? Why are we doing this? Why are we torturing ourselves here? Just so you can give money to another local company here? Thanks.
Not only that, but journalists and musicians are notoriously bad at math, so to try and have you do that is laughable.
Right.
Yeah, it was bad. So when I got out of journalism, I moved to Columbus, and then that's how that whole thing. But in the meantime, with music recording and stuff, I was still using Tcrxp a lot. Eventually, I upgraded to Reaper. I really like Reaper. It's a fantastic software. I know a lot of people are ham-fisted love for Pro Tools.
Oh, yeah.
Pro Tools is not a bad software. Reaper's fantastic for me, at least. It allows me to do everything I need to do and then some, and it's really super simple. I don't need an iLock thing plugged into my stupid USB port the entire time I'm using it. So I don't know. That's just my take on it. It works for what we're doing too,
Yeah, especially in a home studio capacity. I mean, you don't need to learn Pro Tools for that. I mean, it's probably not even feasible to spend that much time to become fluent.
It's also very expensive.
Oh, yeah. It's hundreds of dollars.
Yeah.
Reaper's is
$60? Something like that. It's super cheap.
It's affordable for sure. Right. Definitely like FL Studio.
Well,
prices.
I mean, I know bands that use GarageBand and have very high quality sound.
Yeah.
Stuff.
See, there you go.
And with the right skill set like you've developed, I mean, you've taken a lot of courses that have taught you the skills that you've got.
So I got into hardcore tracking. There's a gentleman out of Canada. His first name is Jordan, and he's going to hate this, but I cannot remember his last name. But he started this really interesting project as from a business standpoint of having done kind of come up in the studio and then seeing how it worked and then basically being like, we don't really need to do it this way. And so he developed his own like online learning course, basically teaching you how to mix music, how to track music, how to edit music. So I went through the time period of like buying his products and learning them, and I really love him. And he has his own like private little Facebook group. And I want to say, there's like, we could probably look this up, like the numbers on how many members are actually in the group. It's substantial. Let's see here. There is 1.5 thousand members in this group.
That's pretty
and
big.
That's, yeah,
especially for this kind of technology. I mean, there's so many players in this realm.
Yeah.
Sure.
So it's definitely helped. And basically anything that we work on, when I finish it, I will drop it in there. If I feel like I need a little reassuring touch of like people who know what the hell they're doing a lot better than I do, I'll be like, I need a critique on this, people. Like, please help me with this. This is the particular problem I'm facing. And I will typically get fantastic feedback, that's professional and very incredibly helpful. And when I go and make the changes, I'm like, oh, wow, damn, my ears did not hear that. That made it a lot better. So, and you just basically try and take that and put it in your toolbox to carry on to the next, record you're making or whatever, which is kind of where we're at now. So, like our next release, I'm trying to time it to be done and ready and available by April. I think towards the end of April, we're going over on Mix 106's Rock Locals First Sunday program. So I want to be able
Tommy Barnes?
Yeah, with Tommy Barnes. So I want to be able to be like, hey, Tommy, here's our latest one. Tell them about this. It just came out like maybe last week or something. And so it'll also give us an opportunity to get to play the stuff too, because that's one of the other things that we haven't really had much of an opportunity to do, just because we've spent so much time in the studio, really.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the majority of our work's been pretty much in the basement so far.
Yeah, and for us, it's also kind of hard finding gigs, the right kind of gigs. I'll put it that way, because
ultimately, I'd say we don't like the traditional going out and drinking. No, I love people. I spend all day talking about hydroponics, man. to have people that just want to grow weed. Anyway, so a lot of the gigs that we try to find, I mean, we don't want to stay up till 1, 2 in the morning. We've got lives. He's old. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I am. I don't want to be out till 2 anymore unless I've got a damn good reason to.
And
I want to go home.
I wake up with my daughter every weekend.
My band recently got two new people in it, and one of them is a minister.
Ooh, interesting.
It's awesome because that means that I get to tell the person on our Saturday night gigs, unfortunately, we can't play really late because we have to be up early for church.
Oh my God, that's hysterical.
And it's awesome.
The best.
And she's also just a fantastic violinist, fiddler.
Oh, nice.
So,
cool.
yeah.
What kind of music have you guys been playing?
We're like American folk popish band.
Cool. I like
think
it.
We're pretty good.
I'm big into the fiddle sound. I love it.
I'm big into her fiddle too. She is awesome.
It takes a good player.
And I know this is your podcast, but don't mind me just
Seriously.
bragging about Becky real quick. She does this thing. So the first time, I'm at the Relax Coffee Shop right across the street from us in Mansfield, and we see her, and she, for the longest time, and I didn't really know her, but this is so funny to me. She's like, oh yeah, I've been like following you guys on Instagram, and like you guys just seem like such cool guys. Like I would love to hang out with you. And I was going, yeah, okay, weirdo. Like,
nobody wants to hang out with us.
Like it's just super weird. And so then like finally, the mandolin player in my band had to drop out because his wife was pregnant, and he like wanted to hang out with her. And I was like, fine, I get that, whatever. And so she came in one day, and I was like, Becky, do you want to come to rehearsal? And she goes, oh, yeah, I could try it out. And I was like, well, now's not the time to be shy. Like, you said you wanted to be in it. So she set my expectations really, really low. She comes in, and she just takes over the band. I was like,
oh, my.
And like you're in, obviously, but you're also maybe one of the best people in this band.
Right off the bat. I'm pretty sure you're the leader.
Yeah, we're going to follow what you tell us now.
Yeah, so, it was awesome.
That's fantastic. I'm glad to hear it. I'd love to meet Becky.
Yeah,
Very
she's
cool.
awesome.
So would she refer to it as playing violin or playing fiddle?
I don't know. Great question. I've always just sort of called it the violin, and she's never argued about it. So
I would stick with that then. You don't want to anger her.
Well, yeah, for sure. She's so nice. I don't think one could be. Are you guys ready to talk about inner-male turmoil?
Internal?
Internal.
I didn't correct it.
That's okay.
That's all
I
right.
mean, males have inner turmoil too.
Yeah.
Just saying.
So, kind of coming back to dystopia, there's a good one, right? Like, the lines in it, pseudo-sarcastic political nature, right? Some of the stuff is about internal struggle, right? Like, the human species has all kinds of problems. And I don't mean like I'm talking about internally, right? Like, every human being has internal problems, whether or not they face them or not in their lifetime. Mm-hmm. Totally up to them, whatever. I would hope that a lot of people want to, because it does make you kind of a better person. Well, ideally.
It affects your external self to fix your internal self.
A lot of people won't start even looking at some of this stuff until they get to be my age or older, So younger kids, they don't really... some of them might, if they're very internal introverts, they might actually start looking at some of the demons and internal things that are wrong. Like for me, I'm not an alcoholic, but I do like to drink, but not like on a massive level. But I could see myself very easily going into that realm really easy in my lifetime. But the cool thing about aging is that, like, if you do keep drinking on it or any kind of crazy stuff, your body eventually starts to reject it. Like, I'm at an age now where I'm just like, yeah, maybe I shouldn't have drank so much last night. Getting up today really hurts. My stomach just feels like absolute crap today. And you're sluggish. There's a great meme that makes fun of like drinking when you're 18 and then drinking when you're 21 and then 28 and then beyond. It's like you just start getting slower and hating your life more and more and stuff like. So that's one vice, right? Think about all the other amazing vices that are out there. Apply that to the idea of your life and try and reconcile it somehow. So a lot of I'm kind of getting a little preachy here, so I'll get off of that. But like in the concept of like writing songs, like I like the idea of looking at some of the things that maybe have gone wrong in my life or maybe were right, and just maybe using it as an influence. It doesn't have to be a direct quote or something, you're just pulling it from as a resource, as a reference, pulling it from your internal toolbox, if you will.
Yeah, I mean that's some of the most genuine music right there, is pulling what you can from deep inside of you.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what...
Soul.
Yeah, exactly. Where do you think that came from?
Right. Having some freaking soul to your music. That's... I
mean, metal, that's how I pulled all the aluminum shavings out of myself.
Yeah?
That's why I'm a metal writer.
Okay. See, talking about...
Good one.
Like thinking about music in general, like from a mixing standpoint and soul, in today's digital age, it is very hard for me to hear the soul sometimes in a lot of music because... analog, there's always that huge conversation. Analog sounds so much nicer versus like the coolness of digital music and everything. And yeah, to some degree that's true. There's a lot of plugins out there that you can use to warm up a sound. And there's obviously lots of preamps and hardware that you can use to really help warm things up too. But, that's just...
And I'd say a lot of it's personal taste too, to be fair. I mean, it's definitely what you like, and it's warmth emotionally from where you're coming from. I mean, I love a lot of different digital music, and there for a long time I really liked dubstep. I'm not gonna trash all of it right now, but what I am gonna say is, generally speaking, it sounds like robot sex.
Okay.
So
you got to think about like
a lot
younger...
of the music we played doesn't sound like that.
I thought that was metal music.
No,
See,
that actually sounds like that's sheet
joke.
metal sex. That's true. I think you beat me. Come on, do the drum roll. Thank you.
Yeah. Like younger people who, if they've never really listened to a lot of things on vinyl or a lot of older music just in general and kind of hear it through warmth, like are really good headphones, a good home audio system, things like that, you kind of miss out on some of that. And if you've grown up listening to music out of a freaking cell phone speaker or laptop speaker, you're missing out on a whole ton of crap that people pour themselves into, and then mixing like stages and all that stuff to really make it sound nice.
It pays to be an audiophile, especially with
Yeah.
the capabilities that mixing and mastering have today.
Yeah. I will say that the first record I made, I'll go ahead and say this because, I'm not embarrassed to talk about this. Like, the first EP that I actually released called One, it was like I had already started writing the songs and putting it together, and we had like a really good idea of what we wanted for the drums to be. But unfortunately at that time, I didn't have the microphone locker like already established that I do now. And even though my mic locker is not that amazing by any means now, I basically have like a bare bones set. I've got I love the SM7B, by the way. It's like my favorite mic in my locker. Like, I use it for hi-hats, shakers, vocals, anything I want. Like, I've even thrown it in front of my guitar amp just to see what the hell it sounds like. I love it.
Yeah, it's
Usually
awesome.
sounds like a thud when you throw it in an amp.
That's terrible. But
Sorry.
so the drums.
I got one guy on my side, Tim.
I'm trying not to giggle into the microphone.
So the drums on it, they're MIDI drums on that EP. I went through a very painstaking process of like writing them out like in the grid and like adding like crescendoing them and stuff like that on rolls and all this stuff, and it's a real time consuming process. And they sound okay for what they are. I'm not going to say that they sound amazing or anything. They do the job, right? That's what it is. They get the job done. And then when we went on to our next release, we actually mic'd the drums, and the drums have been getting better sounding with each release that we do now.
Mm-hmm. And it's also very nice being able to take those old settings, moving them onto the more current tracks. That way you can easily adapt them to the newer songs.
Yeah, make your
Right.
new adjustments.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
It's a lot simpler. I mean, overall the recording process is becoming more and more streamlined every time we release a new song. It's
That's
been
true.
great.
Now that he's got the drums done, basically it's all about like, hey Tim, when are you gonna record the bass and the guitar parts? Like, I don't know. Whenever I get around to it, I'll schedule it. I try and schedule stuff.
Right.
So.
It's kind of nice getting the technology side of things down because ultimately it just leaves more room for creativity.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The kind of coming back to, as far as getting out and like getting this out in front of people, it's like we've been working on trying to get out for about a few months now. It's hard based on like what Zach said here with the specifics of what we're wanting to do. It's kind of like what you mentioned. On a Saturday, we can't stay out past 10 because
Right.
so finding it's interesting. There's a college in Worcester, but yet there's like no real music scene in Worcester at all. Like
Interesting.
no rock, like not a real
Really
good
nothing.
rock or metal scene or anything that I can see. There's a couple bars that you can go play at, and again, like I don't really want to do a ton of bar scenes anymore. One, I feel too old to be doing this crap, at like till 2 a.m, and at that point, your main audience might have showed up at 10 or 11, and they're like, all right, that was fun, I'm going. And you're still stuck sitting there playing for another 2 hours maybe to the people who are just, they're there to get wasted. They don't really, if they're sticking with you all 3 sets maybe.
To your friends and family.
Yeah, like, or they're just an alcoholic.
No,
And,
I mean,
and again, maybe friends and family,
die-hard fans.
Yeah. Again, it could be all of those things. But yeah, so for us, like looking at Worcester, I'm like, where are we going to play out in Worcester? There's like nowhere to play. There's a college in this town. There should be a venue. And I look at Loudonville, and there are no venues in Loudonville. The River Room was potentially the closest thing to a venue, and they're not booking bands anymore because they're going through whatever crisis they're going through. I don't really know, financial or exchanging owners. I have no idea what's going on there. I've made a few calls, and all I keep being told is, we're not booking right now. I'm like, okay, you're really the only venue in town. Just FYI, there's a lot of bands who probably would like to book here. None of the restaurants, and let's be honest, there are no real restaurants in Loudonville anymore. There's a new one opening, but it's not open yet. So, and I don't even know if that would be a possible venue at all either. So there's all these things. Mansfield has got some good venues. You got to remember, since we're not from here originally, when a venue asks me to go sell tickets and I haven't played out in anything, our only gig we've played was like 2 years ago at the Loudonville Fair. When you have like when you're starting from the ground up, basically, it's like, oh yeah, I'm not from here. Let me go sell 20 tickets to an imaginary person who's never heard of me, because it just, you can put a few bucks behind an ad on Facebook all you want, and we have, and that's, we've gotten a little bit of exposure with that. It helps some, but these people aren't really sticking around. They hear you and it's like, okay, that was cool, yeah. So I don't know.
I mean, it requires some extra thinking. We got to think more outside the box. As much time as we've spent in the studio, I mean, we haven't got as much exposure live because there's more stuff out there that's more bar shows, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Or it's pay to play, like you said. I mean, I spent years doing that. I'm, eating $20 per ticket to open for a semi-national act. I mean, it's a nice experience, and you certainly do get the exposure, but is it really worth it in the long run?
I'm surprised that you know of places in this area that's pay to play.
It's not necessarily this area, but like Akron, for example.
Oh, okay.
Akron's like, I would say, the closest music scene, especially to Worcester, and most places looking to book are looking for cover bands, which generally we're not,
right?
Or they're looking for bands that are going to play to 1, 2 in the morning, mostly for drunk people. And being in an original band, it took us, I'd say, a good 2-3 years before we actually developed enough of a following where we actually had fans coming out that weren't just family and friends that we begged or bribed to come out.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, anymore, hell, we might as well pull a Mike Bloomberg and buy every ad space that we can on YouTube. I mean, anything to get the extra exposure. It works.
Oh man, I love the meme that talks about him. It's like, hey, there's all these ads. Too bad I'm watching Netflix.
Pretty much, yeah. Just skip as fast as I can. I mean, that's all you do. I can't afford YouTube music.
Yeah. His ads drive me nuts. I'm always just like, skip.
Right.
Well, so speaking of different places where one could hear your music, on my computer I've got Spotify. I'm sure you're available everywhere else as well.
YouTube, yeah. All those good stuff. You can even what's my favorite one? Shazam. You could even Shazam it if you wanted to.
Nice.
Yeah, which is pretty cool. We're on there. You've got your lyrics.
I didn't honestly know that Shazam existed anymore.
Yeah,
I know, right? Look how aged he is.
I know, right?
I mean, I use it every once in a great while, but I didn't even download it. If you
just said "Hey Siri, what's the name of this band?" It would tell you.
Yeah, I don't have
it anymore.
I use
my assistant.
I use a Samsung Galaxy Note 8, so I don't have Siri. So I'm basically.
Sometimes I forget how the second half lives.
Yeah, I know, right? I'll be sitting at a restaurant and I'll be like, "Hey, this is a cool song." All right, cool. It'll track it for next time when I'm sitting around there again 3 weeks later. I'm like, oh hey, here's another good song that I'll never get back to listening to.
Gotcha.
Oh yeah, hey.
Pretty much. And it's like me writing lyrics. I do it a weird old-fashioned way. You guys know the whole 555 trick for the phone number?
Yeah.
I text messages to that phone number, and that's how I save lyrics that I have throughout the day, especially when I'm at work and I got to be on the phone. Not a whole lot I could do.
I'll
I can't
be
really
honest
write.
with you, Zach. I've never heard of that method.
Yeah.
It's cool.
It's kind of ingenious, right?
Yeah, I started 2 months ago just being like, hey, future Tim. I'm filming a video, be like, hey, future Tim, here's a great melody for you, and I'll sing it to myself, and then I'll never look at it again.
You'll listen to it dude, what drugs did I try that day? Holy shit.
So maybe Tim Apple will give me some money. But on the iPhone, there's a note app.
Oh yeah,
and a voice recorder app that serves me pretty well.
Yeah,
for sure.
This is a note which has a stylus. I think when I'm doing a melody, that's what I use it for. When I want to hear what the melody is, which I think what you're saying does the same thing basically.
Yeah,
for sure.
Well, cool. Is there anything else you guys wanted to talk about?
I don't know. Zach, do you got anything off the top of your head?
Ultimately, we're going to be making moves so you guys can learn more about who we are. For example, this podcast. I thank you guys for listening. I really do want to bring that up because that is worth its weight in gold.
I will say here's the next gig that we do have lined up. We are going to be on, I believe, over at the Metronome Music Festival.
Oh, that's a great.
Nate, the guy who runs that over
Nate's
at Metronome,
awesome.
He's I've been buttering him up for the last couple of years, trying to get on that, and
he's pretty slippery at this point.
Yeah. I never really figured out his method for how he books until a few weeks ago. He was like, "Oh yeah, I just compile the data during an entire year." I'm like, "Oh, I just assumed that you had a sign-up process or some crap like that."
No, that would be too simple.
He's like, "Oh, well then no, I'll save you 25 minutes." I'm like, "Well, that's cool." So I have no idea what time of day we were actually playing that day, but he's basically told me, "Hey, I got a 25-minute spot for you." I'm like, "Cool." Backlines provided, so all we basically got to do is show up, drop my pedal board, plug our IEMs in, and freaking go. So that'll be kind of fun. After that. We do have like more of an acoustic gig, which is kind of funny for us. But I do want to do some of the softer stuff because I know that we can make a little bit of coin on some like wineries and breweries type stuff. That's more mellow sounding, perhaps slowed down versions of our songs.
Little touch of me, I actually built my own. I built my own cajon, so I've got it so I can even add or remove the snare piece. So we've got our own acoustic set, hand built.
Yeah,
super cool.
Yeah, so we'll be at the Ugly Bunny. That one's in October the 9th, and then I think right now that's the only ones that are actually on the schedule. We're trying to get some other ones kind of up and running, but it's just
so far twice as many as we've done in the past.
Yeah, right. No kidding. The theater in Loudonville, I think I want to explore the idea of playing there this summer, maybe, because it's such a. I don't know if you've ever been in that theater.
I've not been in.
Oh, it's gorgeous
I've
inside.
seen photos, and I've been told that it's just remarkably beautiful.
It is.
I don't know. I mean, you guys both been to the Fillmore?
Hotel.
Up in Detroit. Sorry, the Fillmore in Detroit, the music venue. Okay, sorry. And hearing that name, it's just like, oh, okay. But when you see the architecture, especially in person, it's mind-blowing. I mean, the intricacies of everything in there, I can only imagine is similar to the theater in Loudonville.
Yeah, it's a historic building,
I wonder if there's an opportunity for you guys to shoot like a music video.
That'd be kind of cool.
That would be awesome. Yeah,
I am decently good friends with Dan Smith at the Ohio State Reformatory, who told me that they allow people to shoot music videos in there.
Even during like the ghost hunts, because that would be uber cool. I've been to one of those and it was so fun.
I mean, probably. I mean, I don't know how it works. I don't know, but I'm assuming that they would work around whatever schedule they're available.
True. I don't have UV lights, but we do have this like really cool like lighting software and everything. Like it's amazing how much stuff we have ready to go do without anywhere to go do it. Like we have this whole entire like light system, like lighting software, everything's like completely synced up to our click, so we can basically like on a bored Saturday be like, hey, let's just do our whole show to the lights, and like everything's like firing off around you, and so it's super cool to look at.
Yeah, we could literally play any bar and they won't have to have a light system. It's pretty fantastic. Come fully equipped.
Yeah.
All right, boys, thank you so much for coming into the studio all the way from Loudonville and Worcester. I very much appreciate it. This has been a fun episode of the Open Mic Podcast. You've been listening to Tcrxp. Go ahead and give them a listen on Spotify, or if you're out and you hear a song you don't know, use your Shazam. Maybe it'll be them.
Old school.
You never know.
Oh, man.
Thanks so much, guys. I appreciate it.
Yep, thanks for having us.
You're very welcome.
Silence, add a little violence, and bend and pretend and defend and demand my clients, and you can always justify the missile.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Open Mic Podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. I also run Richland Source's Twitter, Newsroom AH, where we share all of the Richland Source music content. I'd love to hear from you there, so tweet at me. I'm Noah Jones. Thanks again for listening to the Open Mic Podcast.